In this lesson, we will learn how to draw a simple arm. Since the arm naturally has the widest range of motion in the body, it's important to understand how to identify certain features that are visible at the surface that will help make our arm more believable in any position. Here we have multiple views of the same basic arm, not too toned or developed, and in a relaxed pose with no strain in any area. Notice how in the relaxed pose, the palms are turned slightly inward, and the fingertips curl naturally at the base. Let's take a look at what gives our relaxed arm this shape and position, even without any flexing. First of all, I have a series of studies broken up in different layers in our arm study folder. I'll go ahead and expose the skeleton layer for now. So as you can see, the skeletal structure is actually built up similar to the leg. There's one large bone making up the upper half of the arm, or up in here, the humerus bone, and two smaller bones at the forearm. One being the radius, which is on the thumb side from the elbow down to the thumb side of the wrist, and then the ulna, which is also attached to the elbow down to the pinky side of the wrist. If we were going to twist our forearm, or if we're going to twist our wrist, these bones will twist over each other. And also, if you notice the elbow, if we are bending at our arm, or if we're bending our arm at our elbow, we'll notice there's a little bit of protrusion here, and that's actually the head of the ulna. And the corners at the elbow are visible in the surface on most cases. We'll go ahead and hide this really quickly so we can see that even in our sketch here, we can see that ulna kind of showing through at the surface. There's a very thin layer of tissue here. If you notice, if you pinch your own elbows, you'll find it's fleshy tissue in here, but again, that bone is exposed quite close to the surface. So it's rather defined, and if you see a more developed arm, there might even be dimples in here, or if it's a more fleshy arm, there might be more folds. But again, it's always visible from the surface, and it sticks out a little bit from the side here, as you can see. So with that said, let's go ahead and take a quick peek at our muscle layers. So here we have just the top layer of muscles. We're not going to go too deep into the muscles individually, but we'll examine certain groups of muscles organized by behavior. So here we have the flexors, the extensors, and the twisters we'll review. I'll go ahead and start with the flexors for now, and I've got a nice blue color selected so we can highlight. So let's start with the most obvious of the flexors group. It's probably going to be the biceps up in here. If you notice, this muscle in here is pretty much shaping out the upper arm, and it makes up the most of the upper arm region. Now this is responsible, or this is also most visible, if we are lifting or bending our arm at the elbow and lifting our hand to our chest area. That muscle is going to be seen a lot. And it's also known for its two heads. So in a more developed arm, you might see two different heads in this area. But on average, it'll just be one big lump to make up the entire bicep region. It's also making up the shape of the arm, so you can kind of see it from the back side even, and from the inside, because it's wrapping around inside, just right in here. So again, this flexor is responsible for lifting the arm towards, or lifting the limbs towards the body. And if we're going to look at from the bottom forearm, or the bottom half of the arm, which is the forearm region, we can see that the flexors are in the back of this arm, just underneath the elbow, on the pinky side. And this flexor is responsible for bending the wrist outwards, and also inwards towards the bottom of the forearm right in here. So that's important to keep that in mind, to know when we're going to be flexing it, when it's going to be visible, and when to define the surface or not. And also you can see it kind of in here from this side, so it's kind of coming around. So there's about 4 muscles down here. We can see them all from different angles, and really 2 of them are most visible from the surface. So we don't have to focus too much on this, but again, we'll see them flexing when we're bending our wrist backwards or outwards. For the next group, we'll go ahead and expose this. We have the extensor group, and basically these act as antagonists. I'll go ahead and highlight a different color. These act as antagonists to the flexors. They do the opposite. They pull in the opposite direction, and the most obvious of this region, or this muscle group, is the triceps back here. Again, it's making up most of the arm, the upper arm region. I'll go ahead and highlight this. And the triceps is actually named for the 3 heads that are visible in some arms, in some cases. You'll see the more developed arm has a little bit of a dent in here, and it's a little bit more obvious. But for the most part, it just gives a nice shape to the back of the arm, so it's never really fully flat. Go ahead and highlight this region in here. All right, and also from the inside you can see it quite a bit. I'm going to highlight this whole region in here. So there's one big head right in here. And again, what this does is if we're pulling our arm backwards, it's opposite again. So if we're pulling our arms back, we'll see that flexing in there. Or if we're actually pulling our arm or pulling a rope down from a tree or a branch down from the tree, we'll see that if we're pulling in a downward position, we'll see that flexing in there. So that's really important to keep in mind. Now as for the forearm, there are 4 muscles in the upper part of the arm. If you see the back side of the wrist or the back of the hand, if you follow that up, we'll find there's 4 different muscles that make up this group. Right in here. Now the 4th muscle is not always visible. In some people it's non-existent, but again it's important to keep in mind it's